They found his teeth before they found his name. The alley stank of copper and fear. A leather jacket soaked in blood clung to the body like a last insult. The cop stepped carefully around scattered shell casings, 45s, close range. Whoever did this wanted him to feel it. Harlem didn't sleep that night. Word spread like wildfire through payphones and backroom whispers. Someone iced a made man. And not just any man. Rico Cortez. Crew boss. Ruthless. Untouchable. Until tonight. In a flickering streetlight, a single chain glinted. Alpo's signature Cuban link. That was no accident. That was a message. Someone was shaking the old order, and they were doing it loud. By morning, the neighborhood was under siege. Cops swarmed like flies. Crew leaders vanished. Storefronts shuttered. And in the shadows of it all, Alpo Martinez lit a cigarette, watching from his blacked-out SUV. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe hard. We just started, he muttered. Harlem was about to drown in blood. Before he was a killer, Alpo was a runner. 12 years old. Fast on his feet, and faster with lies. He hustled candy and mixtapes on corners while dodging his mother's belt and the neighborhood bullies. The streets weren't a choice. They were the only language spoken. He learned the code early. Keep your mouth shut, your eyes open, and your enemies closer than family. Harlem didn't hand out second chances, only graves and legends. One afternoon in '78, he watched a man get stabbed over a dice game. The blade didn't scare him. The calm afterward did. That was when he knew. Fear ruled the city, and if he could be the most feared, he'd never be powerless again. That was the moment little Pedro Alpo Martinez died, and Alpo, the street prophet, was born. By 17, Alpo was untouchable. He rolled through Harlem in a red Iraq Z, stereo blasting, gold chains swinging. His pockets were fat, but his smile was lean. He didn't laugh much, only grinned when someone begged. The old heads hated him, called him reckless. But they were fading ghosts, and Alpo was neon. He ran his corner with steel and charisma, turning corner boys into soldiers. He paid them well. Paid them fast. But crossed him once, and your mother was buying your suit in black. He was rising fast, and with every dollar stacked, he grew colder. Love didn't matter. Blood ties didn't either. Harlem was his, and he would burn anyone who tried to take it. Rico Cortez was the one name Alpo couldn't ignore. A Dominican shot caller, with eyes like razors and rules like iron. He ran Washington Heights, and his territory stopped just shy of Alpo's. But Harlem was bleeding southward, and Rico didn't like it. At a private sit-down in a backroom bodega, Rico warned Alpo, "Stay in your lane, or we'll bury you in it." Alpo smiled, cool and calm, but his knuckles were white on the armrest. Respect was currency, but so was fear. And Rico didn't respect him. That was his first mistake. That night, Alpo opened his trunk and looked down at the arsenal inside. 2 MAC-10s, a .38 snub, and a sawed-off Mossberg. This wasn't a warning war. This was annihilation. "He made the call?" Alpo said. His crew nodded. No questions. They were soldiers, not thinkers. They slid into black sedans like ghosts. That would be the last night Rico slept sound. Harlem wasn't big enough for 2 kings. And Alpo never liked sharing. Before the empire, there was just a boy with a bruised face and a steel spine. Pedro Martinez grew up in a Harlem walk-up where the heat never worked, and the screams were louder than the TV. His mother cleaned office buildings by night, prayed by morning, and cried in between. Alpo watched it all. No father. No guidance. Just concrete and consequence. The only warmth he knew was from the streets, the men in Cadillacs who tossed him 20s for errands, who smelled of cologne and blood. He idolized them. They gave him sneakers, stories, and a name that would soon echo across Harlem like a war drum. Alpo. But that name came with a cost. The first time he ran a package, his hands shook. The second time he smiled. By the third, he was already hooked. Power didn't come from prayers. It came from fear. And Alpo was learning how to be feared. The streets weren't fair, but they were consistent. And Alpo learned fast. By 16, he had his own operation. Runners on bikes, lookouts with pagers, and stash houses buried behind laundromats. He ran the block with more discipline than any classroom ever offered. But with every dollar, he lost a piece of himself. His mother tried to pull him back. "Pedro, Dios te va a castigar," she cried, clutching rosary beads. Alpo just kissed her forehead and walked out. He wasn't Pedro anymore. That boy died the moment the streets embraced him. And that day, as his crew loaded duffel bags into the trunk of a Cadillac, he looked back at the building he grew up in. One final time. "I'm not going back," he said. And he never did. Power made him magnetic. Women whispered his name. Kids mimicked his walk. Ogs either respected him or wanted him dead. But no one ignored Alpo. He dressed like a rap video and moved like a chess player. His charm wasn't loud. It was lethal. At clubs, he sat in the darkest booths, eyes scanning like a predator. He didn't drink, didn't laugh, just watched. Every handshake was a transaction. Every hug a test. One night, a rival stepped to him in Jimmy's Uptown. "You're lucky we're in public," the man growled. Alpo didn't blink. "Then pray we stay here," he said. That rival was found 2 days later, floating in the Bronx River. That was the message. Alpo didn't bark. He bit, and no one heard him coming. But under all the swagger and steel, Alpo had a weakness: trust. And he gave it once. His best friend, Darnell Bones Taylor, was with him since the candy-selling days. They stole bikes together, cracked safes together, bled together. Bones was wild, unpredictable, but loyal. Or so Alpo thought. Bones had debts. Ugly ones. And to wipe the slate clean, he started whispering into the wrong ears. The feds. The Colombians. Anyone who'd listen. He thought he could feed crumbs and stay clean. But you can't feed sharks and expect to swim. Alpo didn't find out from the streets. He found out from his wiretap guy. And the tape didn't lie. "Bones," Alpo whispered, playing the recording. "You should have died broke, not a traitor." Bones never saw the bullet coming. 1 second, they were laughing over old stories, and the next his brains painted the motel wall behind him. Alpo stood over the body for a long time, pistol still smoking, the silence deafening. No words. No apology. Loyalty was a currency, and Bones spent his last coin. The motel room reeked of blood and betrayal. Alpo left the body on the bed, door wide open, as a final sermon to anyone watching. Harlem's streets weren't just paved in pain. They were soaked in lessons. And Alpo? He was now the teacher. That night, he burned the clothes, wiped the prints, and looked in the mirror. No regret. No remorse. "One less liar," he muttered, pulling his hoodie over cold eyes. The empire didn't grow. It exploded. After Bones, there were no more limits. Alpo pushed into new corners, swallowed rival blocks like quicksand, and replaced fear with loyalty bought in stacks of cash. He had shooters in every borough and lieutenants who answered with a nod. Crack moved like lightning, and his name was whispered in bodega lines and basketball courts. But expansion came with friction. One crew from the Bronx refused to bow. They hijacked a shipment, sent the driver back without his hands. Alpo didn't send a warning. He sent fire. 4 dead. 2 buildings torched. No survivors. Harlem didn't sleep that week. The police were overwhelmed, the mayor enraged. But Alpo kept moving. "No kings," he said, "only conquerors." He wasn't selling drugs anymore. He was selling fear. And business was good. The news called it a gang war. But it was a cleansing. Alpo didn't just want Harlem, he wanted history. He wanted songs, murals, and silence when he walked into a room. And he'd kill to get it. He started buying cops, judges, law. Even a city councilman whispered his name with respect. The streets were divided into color-coded maps pinned on his wall. Green was his. Red was dead. And yellow was coming. He gave his crew one order: no hesitations. Anyone steps out of line, bury them. That week, 3 lieutenants vanished. No funeral. No goodbyes. Just silence. Even Alpo's most loyal started sleeping with pistols under their pillows. Harlem didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield. And Alpo? He felt like God. But gods don't bleed. Until they do. A shipment from D.C. vanished. 3 of his men were found in a trunk outside Newark, their tongues cut out. The message was clear. Someone had reached inside Alpo's house. He smashed a chair across his office wall, screaming names, demanding answers. No one spoke. Eyes darted. Fingers twitched. "If I smell fear," Alpo warned, "I'll burn your families." Then he went quiet. "We got a ghost in the room," he muttered. From that moment, paranoia crept into every move. He started changing phones twice a day. Rode in decoys. Slept in bulletproof vests. The conqueror was now the hunted. Someone was bleeding his empire dry from the inside. And Alpo didn't believe in accidents. The crew started breaking. Deals fell through. 2 suppliers vanished. 1 safe house was hit by an anonymous raid. No police badge, just bodies. Alpo's right-hand Manny was caught skimming, and Alpo made him dig his own grave in the Bronx woods. "You forgot who made you," Alpo said before pulling the trigger. The echo rolled through the trees like a curse. After that, no one dared speak above a whisper. Harlem's streets weren't buzzing. They were holding their breath. Loyalty was now a liability. And Alpo? He walked more alone each day, his circle shrinking into shadows. The legend was still alive, but bleeding. And the sharks were circling. Then came the girl. Layla. Dull. South Bronx queen with a voice like broken glass, and eyes that didn't blink. She wasn't afraid of Alpo. She knew what he did, and kissed him anyway. She called him Pedro when they were alone, peeling back his mask with soft hands and cruel truths. "You're not a king," she said. "You were a scared little boy with a crown of bone." Alpo should have left. Should have shut the door and never looked back. But he didn't. She was the only one who made him feel human. Which made her dangerous. Because in Harlem, love wasn't sacred. It was a weapon. And someone, somewhere, had already loaded the bullet. Layla knew things she shouldn't. She asked questions no one else dared to. "Who really killed Rico, and why'd you leave the chain?" Alpo never answered. Just changed the subject, lit a cigarette, and stared at the window. But the doubt lingered. One night, he caught her rifling through his desk. She smiled like it meant nothing. "Looking for a pen," she said. But the drawer held more than pens, blueprints, burner phones, ledgers coded in nicknames. The kind of things that don't forgive curiosity. He didn't say a word. Didn't raise a hand. But his silence hit harder than a punch. That night, he slept with his pistol under the pillow. Not for enemies. For her. Because betrayal doesn't always wear boots. It wears perfume. And Alpo felt the tremor in his gut. The devil wasn't outside. She was right beside him. The next day, the wiretap guy called. "You need to hear this," he said. The tape hissed, then crackled to life. Layla's voice, soft, measured. "Yes, I'm close, closer than anyone. He trusts me." Silence. "Then, I'll get you everything. Just protect me when it's done." The room froze around Alpo. "And say Willem Sembil from P. He's Scania de Durstower. Aderic Sheer Clark." His pulse didn't. He stared at the recorder like it had murdered his mother. Every lie, every kiss, every whispered name, it was all a setup. Layla wasn't just dangerous. She was the ghost in his walls. The one feeding the feds. The one feeding his enemies. Alpo didn't shout. Didn't rage. He just nodded slowly. The game hadn't changed. It had always been rigged. And now he had to flip the board. He didn't kill her. That was the surprise. He watched her sleep that night, pistol on the nightstand, heart burning. She looked peaceful. Like none of it ever happened. Like the betrayal was fiction. But Alpo didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. Instead, he made a call. Bring her cousin, the one she loves. The next day, the cousin disappeared. Layla got the message when the necklace showed up on her doorstep, blood-stained, wrapped in silk. She didn't cry. Just stared at Alpo across the table and whispered, "You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." He smiled. "Then bury me properly." Neither of them blinked. Love was over. War had begun. The betrayal spread like poison. Within days, Alpo's crew split. Half vanished. The other half turned paranoid, watching each other with shaking fingers on triggers. His Bronx Connect pulled out. DC went silent. The pipeline was drying up. Even the crooked cops started avoiding him. Harlem was slipping through his fingers like ash. He moved stash houses. Burned old ledgers. Cut off lieutenants. Trust was a liability now. He kept his circle to 3. And still, someone leaked his safe house. A midnight raid lit up the building. Automatic fire, Molotovs, screams. Alpo escaped barefoot, wrapped in smoke. He didn't sleep that night. He just sat on a rooftop, hoodie up, watching the sun rise over a city that once called him king. Now it wanted him gone. Layla disappeared. No body. No trace. Just a cold echo in Alpo's head. Maybe she ran. Maybe someone got to her first. But her ghost stayed. In every shadow, every silence, every woman who looked at him too long. Alpo became colder than steel. No more warmth. No more chances. Every deal was now a test. Every smile, a target. The empire was crumbling, but the myth was still alive. And that myth kept him breathing. Because myths don't bleed. They just haunt. He rode through Harlem in silence now, alone in bulletproof windows, pistol on lap, eyes scanning for ghosts. He wasn't building anything anymore. He was surviving. But even that, he knew, had a timer. Tick. Tick. Worm. Tick bite. The final war started with a whisper. A name passed between lips like poison. Dante Vega. A shadow from DC. A fixer. 9. A ghost who'd once owed Alpo his life. And now wanted to end it. Vega was methodical. His crew moved like ghosts, hitting stash spots in 3 cities at once. Alpo's money evaporated overnight. His drivers disappeared. One was mailed back in pieces. Harlem was no longer shaking, it was shattering. Alpo stood in his safe house, maps burned, men gone, and whispered one word: enough. He didn't care about business. Not anymore. This wasn't about empire. This was personal. Vega had called him out. So Alpo strapped up, blacked out the windows, and loaded every round he had. Tonight, he said, we close the book. The showdown happened in the back of a butcher shop on 146th. No security cameras. No exit plan. Just blood on the floor and bullets in the air. Vega was already waiting, scarred, calm, pistol loose in his hand. You should have stayed buried, he said. Alpo stepped forward, unblinking. I built this world, you just scavenged it. Then came the thunder. Gunfire erupted like fireworks. Meat hooks swung. Freezer doors crashed open. One of Alpo's men caught 3 rounds in the chest. Vega disappeared into smoke. Alpo pursued, bleeding from the shoulder, pistol flashing in bursts of firelight. There were no rules. No mercy. Just 2 kings in a kingdom crumbling. And only one would walk out. Alpo chased Vega through the alley, both limping, both low on bullets. Rain started to fall. slow at first, then pounding like drums. Vega ducked behind a dumpster, panting. "You're done," he called out. "You ain't a legend. Just another name on a headstone." Alpo stepped into the open, blood mixing with water, pistol shaking. "Then carve it yourself." A final shot rang out. Vega's body dropped. Silent. Heavy. Final. Wall. Alpo stood there, soaked in rain, staring down at the man who tried to unwrite him. But he didn't feel relief. Just weight. The kind that never lifts. The kind you carry to the grave. He'd won. But there was no crown. Just thunder and sirens in the distance. By morning, the city was quiet, but not calm. Word spread fast. Alpo Martinez killed Vega with his own gun. The last rival, gone. But so was everything else. His crew scattered. His name radioactive. No one would take his calls. No corners left to claim. No street would shelter him. He stood outside the same apartment he grew up in, paint peeling, windows cracked. A ghost of a boy once called Pedro stared back at him from the glass. His mother was long gone. Everyone was. Only Harlem remained. Silent, tight, watching, judging, dudging. Alpo pulled out a cigarette with bloody fingers and whispered, "I buried kings and became nothing." The cigarette burned to ash in his hand. So did everything else. He could have vanished. The feds would have welcomed him with a new name and clean passport. I did. But ghosts don't hide. They haunt. So Alpo walked straight into the funeral. Dante Vega's funeral. Black suit tight. Black gloves. Black heart. People gasped. Some ran. One. Others froze. But no one stopped him. He stood by the casket, stared down at the stitched-up face and whispered, "This city chose me. You were just a footnote." No one touched him. No bullets flew. Because Harlem knew this wasn't courage. It was prophecy. He didn't belong to the living anymore. That night, his name echoed in whispers and nightmares. Alpo Martinez didn't die that day. But something else did. The illusion that he could ever be replaced. Alpo disappeared like a ghost swallowed by fog. No charges. No trial. No headlines. Just silence. Rumor said he cut a deal with the feds. Others said he faked his death and walked into witness protection with a new name and a clean slate. But the streets knew better. You don't leave the devil's game without leaving pieces behind. Somewhere in Middle America, a man named Abraham Porter stocked shelves at a hardware store, wore flannel, drove a rusted pickup, smiled when he didn't want to. But at night, when the lights were off and the silence crept in, Alpo came back. In memories. In nightmares. In the mirror. You can run from the bullets. But not the guilt. He traded power for peace. And all he got was the quiet. He kept to himself. No friends. No stories. Just routines. He drank black coffee. Walked the same road every morning. Sometimes paused at the town's frozen lake and stared into the white silence. He looked normal. But inside, the king still breathed. He remembered the screams, the blood, the crown made of bones. He could still feel the weight of the pistol. The street corners haunted him like dead brothers. A retired cop once asked him his name. "Porter," he said, steady. But his hands trembled. Even with the badge gone, ghosts recognize each other. That night, Alpo buried every gun he still owned beneath the shed. Not because he was safe, but because he finally knew he wasn't coming back. But the past doesn't stay buried. One day, a letter arrived. No return address. Just a Polaroid inside, a shot of his old block in Harlem. Tagged with fresh graffiti, "Ghosts don't hide." His hands shook for the first time in years. Someone remembered. Someone still cared enough to hate. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, eyes locked on the photo, pistol on the counter. He thought of Layla, of Bones, of Vega, of every name he turned to ash. Maybe this was justice. Maybe it was karma. But whatever it was coming. And Alpo didn't fear death. He feared being remembered wrong. He feared becoming myth. The next morning, he packed a small duffel bag. No notes. No goodbyes. Just silence. He drove west, past cornfields and broken fences, never looking back. Somewhere on the edge of nowhere, he found a motel with no name. Paid in cash. Took the farthest room. And waited. Maybe for them. Maybe for peace. Every creak in the floorboards was a gunshot in his mind. Every knock, a death sentence. But he didn't run. Not anymore. He was tired. Tired of running. Tired of pretending. The devil doesn't fear hell. He lives in it. And Alpo? He was already home. No bullets came. No shadows knocked. Just days of waiting and stillness. And then one night, he looked in the mirror and said it out loud. I'm Alpo Martinez. For the first time in years, the name felt heavy. Real, when. No more masks. No more hiding. Just a man surrounded by ghosts. He didn't flinch. Didn't cry. He just nodded. That was the price. Not death. Not prison. Silence. A slow suffocation of everything he once was. He'd outlived kings and killers. But the world moved on. And Alpo? He was just a name in stories mothers told their sons when they warned them not to chase crowns. They don't come with glory, he muttered, flicking off the light. They come with graves. Years passed. New names ruled Harlem. New codes died fee. New gods. But the old stories still echoed. Kids whispered about Alpo Martinez like he was a ghost that could reach through walls. Some called him a legend. Others, a rat. Truth was, no one really knew where he went. Until someone said they saw him. At a gas station near the Bronx. Gray hair. Slower walk. Same eyes. Word spread like wildfire. Alpo's back. Some laughed. Some locked their doors. One crew, the sons of a man he buried, loaded guns and got in the car. Not for glory. Not for the streets. For blood. Because ghosts don't die. They wait. And Harlem had waited long enough. They didn't want revenge. They wanted silence. He felt it before he saw it. The way the air went still. The way the street emptied. Alpo looked up and saw the SUV roll closer, slow like a funeral procession. No honk. No screech. Just the click of a window lowering. And then, eyes. 4 of them. Young, but familiar. Rage passed down like inheritance. Alpo didn't run. He didn't reach for a gun. He just stared. For a moment, it was quiet. Then the barrel appeared. One shot. Right through the heart. Dull. He dropped without a word, gas pump still clutched in his hand. The SUV vanished into smoke. No screaming. No chase. Just stillness. Like Harlem had finally exhaled. The ghost was gone. The silence was back. The news gave him 4 lines. Former drug trafficker found shot in the Bronx. No suspects identified. No photos. No funeral. Just silence. But the streets remembered. Old heads nodded in bars. Kids asked their uncles who he was. And the stories came back, louder than the truth. Some said he was a king who broke the code. Others said he died trying to make peace. Nobody said his real name. Not Pedro. That boy was gone long ago. All that remained was myth. A name carved in whispers and warnings. Alpo. A lesson. A legend. A ghost. And in Harlem, that's all you ever really leave behind. In a small locked storage unit upstate, dust covered everything. Inside, a box labeled ppm, there were photos. A red Iraq Z-Bones smiling. Layla in silk. Maps, chains, and a cassette. A lifetime of power sealed in cardboard. No one came to claim it. No one dared. But one day, a boy, just 15, picked a lock. He didn't know the name, just heard the stories. He looked through the box like it was treasure. Found the photo of Alpo in his prime. Smirking. Alive, Detmol. Damn, the boy whispered. And just like that, the cycle breathed again. The myth passed on. Because in Harlem, legends don't die. They recruit. There's no retirement plan for ghosts. No monuments. No last words. Just the silence they leave behind. Alpo Martinez lived fast, ruled loud, and died quiet. Not in fire. Not in glory. But in truth. A truth buried under bullet holes and betrayal. His story wasn't a warning. It was a mirror. Of power. Of fear. Of the boy who became a king and paid in blood. Harlem didn't forgive. But it remembered. And somewhere in a corner of the block where his name was first whispered, a kid stood tall. Eyes hard, fists clenched, asking one question. Who's next? And the street, like always, whispered back.